Setup. First, separate the reference and error cards from the deck of cards. Deal a reference card to each player, and arrange the error cards according to the instructions. Next, separate out the starting decks by looking at the starting deck symbols in the lower left-hand corners of the cards. Each player selects his starting deck, and the remaining cards are shuffled into the rest of the deck. Each player takes their starting deck of 6 cards and shuffles it to form their gene pool. Then each player draws according to the error card, in this case drawing 4 cards from the random mutations deck and 1 card from their own gene pool. To form a hand of 5 cards. During play, refer to the turn order card to remind you of the order of the phases of the game. In the first phase, Expression, you declare whether you're playing all or only some of your cards, and you refer to the error card to see what the minimum number of cards played is, in this case, 4. In this case, I think I'll play all my cards, even though I don't have a great hand, because I do have Fire, which allows me to double the value of a green monster. During the second phase, Growth, each player builds their monsters simultaneously, something like this. Once you have your monsters built, you can look at scoring. First, we add up the face values of our cards. We can see here that the face values add up to a total of 8 points. Looking next, we add 1 bonus point for each single color monster with no loose ends. We only have 1 monster here with no loose ends, so we add 1 more point there, getting to 9. The rules then say if we need to double a monster's value, we double both the face values and the bonus points. In this case, the Fire allows us to double this monster's value. It gets 3 points from its face value, 1 for having a bonus point, so it's worth 4, but we double that to 8. Additionally, this monster doubles to 2. If I had had any other purple parts connected to it, those would also have been doubled, but I didn't have any other purple cards, so I left it separate because it only gets its bonus if it's all purple. Finally, we get 1 more bonus point if, considering all the cards that we played as a group, there are no loose ends. We left a loose end on the purple bug because we didn't have any other purple parts to connect it to, and we didn't connect it up here. Now, we only got 1 point for doubling this, and so we actually get the same score for connecting it here. We lose the 1 for doubling it, but we get 1 more for not having any loose ends anywhere on the monster. So it's kind of a wash. The next phase is breeding, where we gain cards. And we gain those cards according to the error card. In this case, we see that the winner of the round, whoever had the highest score, gains 1 from play and 1 from hand, and everyone else just gains 1 from their own hand. Now what does that mean? Well, cards from play, this row, represents all the cards played by all the players. The cards from hand represents all the cards that came from your own hand. So if I had won this hand, I would have my choice of 2 different cards. I could choose 1 from another player if I liked, or I could choose 2 from my own hand. Now, the next 4 cards in the stack, combined with the top card from their gene pool, would have been this hand, which is actually a 19, and they would have won the round. So in this case, they would get first pick, and I believe they would take these 2 cards from their own play, 1 from play and 1 from their own hand. Now, because I didn't win, I don't get to choose any from other people's hands, only from my own. So I don't get to choose their 4, which would be better than my 3. I only get to choose my own 3, which I'll add to my discard pile. Finally, The last phase is mutation, where we discard any cards that aren't gained and we draw a new hand. This means taking all the cards that nobody took and putting them into a common discard pile here for the random mutations. Then, starting with the winner, drawing a new hand. And that's the basics of a hand of Teratozoic. You continue drawing new hands, building monsters, taking the best parts you can and adding them to your gene pool. As your gene pool draws out, you'll shuffle your discard into it so that the cards that you've been gaining come into your hand. And as the eras advance, you see that you'll draw more and more cards from your own gene pool and fewer from the random mutations pile until in the final era, you're drawing entirely from your own gene pool and not at all from the random mutations pile. Now, we advance through these eras every time the random mutations deck draws out. So when we get to the bottom of this stack, we shuffle it back in again and advance the era. When you get to the end of the final era, the Teratozoic era, you'll have a pretty big gene pool, and you get to the winning condition, which requires you to build with your entire gene pool the 3 largest single color monsters with no loose ends that you can. This means that your strategy throughout the game isn't just to have the highest numbered cards, but to end up with a gene pool that has sufficient numbers of connecting parts and closing parts, so that you can have no loose ends when you get to the final era. In this case, I had 22 cards in my 3 monsters, which is really good. In a highly competitive game, each player may have as few as 8 or 10 cards in their monsters. 22 was probably going to be the winning number. And that's it. That's how you play Teratozoic. You build monsters hand after hand, trying to get the best monster parts into your deck, so that at the end of the game, you will have won the most hands, but also be able to close off your monsters with the least number of extra parts that you couldn't use. A lot of the strategy comes during the expression phase, where you declare whether you're going to play all or only some of your cards, and then the minimum numbers of cards played expressed on the era cards. In the early game, you want to hold back high value cards, such as a 6, because they'll help you win the rounds during the main part of the game. But towards the end of the game, you want to be sure you hold out a lot of cards that don't have a lot of connections, so that you have enough parts to close off the monsters when you get to the end of the game. I hope you have a chance to enjoy it.